Hello and welcome. It's episode 5 of the Making Finance Fun podcast. My name is Neil and I'm joined by my lovable Irish fellow over here, Clive. Hello, Clive. How are you?
Good morning, Neil. We are in great form and happy Friday to everybody who's tuning in live or if you're watching back. Happy weekend, whatever it is. Glad you're here anyway to watch us.
Friday the 14th of June, mate. We are almost halfway through the year and it's pissing down outside, which is typical summer weather here in the UK. How is it your side of the water?
Yeah, quite surprisingly, it's a beautiful day out here today, although it has been absolutely lashing down for the last couple of days. So, if it stays like this for the weekend, I don't mind what way the weather was. So, and the Euros, Neil, the Euros start tonight.
They do. Are you rooting for Scotland or Germany?
I'm going to be rooting for... I actually don't know. I really appreciate just good football. And look, it's a good job Ireland's not in the tournament this time round because they were obviously clear favourites to win.
Oh dear. God loves a try, right?
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully I get some time to watch some stuff. But I think it's 8 o'clock tonight, isn't it? So I should be able to watch that game. My better half is out for a meal with some lady friends, so I have the house to myself. So I hope to watch it. What have you been up to the last couple of weeks, mate?
Oh, last couple of weeks. We're just busy with client work here at the minute, just getting some year-end accounts completed. And what we're trying to do is just introduce some new systems. So we're introducing a practice management system where we're going to outline what we do, how we do it, and when we do it. So we're going to introduce like task management. We're going to introduce standard operating procedures, kind of like what way do we need to do things. And that's going to lead on to probably building a team in the future. So it's about building the foundations today so we can work on building the business tomorrow sort of thing. What else is happening? I'm supposed to be in Florida this weekend.
Are you?
But yeah,
what for?
Yeah. But I just,
holiday?
Well, no. Well, it's kind of a holiday. So I got listed for like the Pro Advisor Top 100 a couple of months ago.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Loads of people voted, and I really appreciate that. So I got shortlisted for the top 50, and that award ceremony is on this weekend. But I had to do the podcast instead, so I won't be there. I won't be there to pick up the award, but look, there is some great people there. I know Ash Beaton there from NetTracker, the guy behind NetTracker. He's heading over to Florida this weekend, so hopefully he'll be taking home some silverware or goldware or crystalware, whatever it's going to be. So that's that. Yeah, fuck it. Listen, we'll do the podcast instead.
What a choice to make. I mean, I feel for you, mate. Like, really do.
It's okay, Neil. I'm in my happy place here when I'm with you guys, so I'm okay with that. We have just been asked this week to do a panel discussion with QuickBooks Online. They're going to host another in-person event in Dublin in July on Thursday the 11th. Venue to be announced or confirmed, but it looks like it's going to be half day with some drinks and canapes at the end. So you know it's a fancy affair when they say canapes instead of finger food. So looking forward to that as well.
What's the topic of the discussion? Is it like an all-day thing?
No, it's actually going to be a half day. So it's going to be like the usual product updates. The message that we need to get through here is...
Sounds a bit like a jolly, if you ask me. A bit of a jolly with canapes and whatever else.
The last time we were in the Mason Hotel, it's like a 4-star, and they were like, we need please recommend 5-star hotels. So they're going top notch, right? Wow.
Don't moan about your licenses increasing. That's where the budget's going, right? Clive Hand in Dublin. You heard it here first.
Yeah, there you go. So that's something to look forward to next month. What about yourself, Neil? Anything exciting? Have you been taking trips to London this week or what?
It's been like the last 2 weeks has been really busy for clients, for new clients. We've gone through a bit of a process where, I don't know, when I was back in Portugal with you beginning of May, we had quite a few conversations that led to some proposals being sent, and a lot of those have kind of come to fruition over the last sort of 2 weeks. So we've had 5 or 6 new clients, really exciting clients actually. We've got a pub chain in Weston-super-Mare here, which at the moment is 3, soon to be 4 pubs. That'd be pretty cool to work with. We've also got another recruitment agency based in Bristol, so they deal with accountancy and finance. So somebody that I used to deal with when I was a manager back in the veterinary company. I've not spoken to them for like 6 years, but they followed the story on LinkedIn and they want to do some stuff. So that was, kind of the power of being consistent and staying in touch with people is kind of there for that one. But yeah, new clients. What else have we done? My son was in a football tournament a couple of weekends ago. Got a bit sunburnt, quite sunny. It was good. Under sevens football tournament, quite chaotic. It was like 20 teams. There's like 300 kids. It was mental. And I've been asked to speak at Mark Wickesham's next Value Pricing Academy conference, which I think is the end of this month. It's probably just before the next podcast that we're due to do, all around business advisory. So I'm looking forward to doing a little speaking slot at that virtual conference. And speaking of conferences, Clive, I did go to London this week. I was asked to speak at ZeroCon, which for the listeners out there that don't know what ZeroCon is, it's Zero's. I call it annual conference. It's not annual anymore. It's kind of almost biannual. I think they do it every 2 years, but they do it all around the world. So I think last year, it was in Sydney. They're doing one in Nashville, San Francisco it's been before as well, but when they come to the UK they tend to do it in London. So I went to the Excel in London on Wednesday, did an all-day trip, 17 hours on the train, to do a speaking slot with 2,500 people in attendance, and it was pretty scary, I'm not gonna lie. It was pretty nerve-wracking, but I come off that stage feeling pretty cool. It was really awesome to do, and I feel quite blessed that they asked me to do it. There was only like 20 speakers in terms of like, you got zero employees, like directors and stuff doing talks. You got your keynote speakers, so like Jason Bradbury was there from the Gadget Show. That was really, really interesting. Sue Perkins hosted the event, and some other kind of famous-ish people. And then you had the minions like us, the accountancy business owners that were invited to do some talks. And there's probably like, I don't know, sort of 22 dozen of us. So out of the thousands of Zero kind of affiliated accountants in the country, it was quite an honour to be asked to do it. So yeah, mate, that was me for the last couple of weeks. Busy.
It does sound like a pretty busy couple of weeks. All right, Jeannie Mac. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I was talking to Canapés. Because I came back on the Wednesday. ZeroCon is a 2-day event, so I missed the infamous party on the Wednesday evening, and I saw some pictures, and there was like live bands and confetti, and there was a laser cage, apparently, whatever one of those is, and lots of beer and lots of food. So I missed that, sadly, but yeah, there you go.
Oh, well, there's always next year or the year after, or you can take a trip to Sydney or wherever it's going to be. That could be the next thing for you to do.
Yeah, I'm going to ask for an invite, yeah. I'm going to try and get my travel and accommodation sorted, leave the family behind and go out there for a few days. That'd be amazing.
Go for it.
Anyway, this is episode 5. What are we doing today? Well, this is episode 5, and somebody, for their sins, has decided to be guinea pig and come on as an interview guest type thing. I feel blessed that somebody wants to come on this little podcast that's pretty much only just started. So I keep saying it. Some of the feedback that we've been getting is really, really cool on kind of social media, and we're now streaming back into the Facebook groups as well. So both Clive and I's Facebook groups, if you're listening to this live or if you're watching the recording, there was an issue with groups. We fixed that, and we've got a guest. I'll let them introduce themselves in a minute, but kind of this session is all around, I guess, how to build not only just how to build a business, but how to build a business that's right for you as the business owner. And we touched a bit about this, probably the last episode, when we spoke about using a modern accountant and then kind of figuring out what the goals of the business owner should be. So I'm delighted to welcome Mr. Ryan James to the podcast. Hi, Ryan.
Hey, James. How you doing?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for agreeing to be our guinea pig for our first.
I put my guinea pig mask on now, do I?
There you go. So, for the benefit of everybody, the millions that are watching at home, clearly, could you give us like a few minutes of an intro just to tell us about your background, where you're from, and I guess what you're doing right now and why you're here today?
Yeah, sure, absolutely, cool. Well, and thanks. All your exciting stories about laser cages in Florida. very exciting. I feel very privileged that you came back early to arrange the podcast, Neil, and Clive, that you're here today.
There you go.
Right.
So a little bit about me. I live in North Somerset in UK, which is not far from. I'm very close to where Neil is, and I have a business called Gomentum, which is my passion is all about helping small businesses, and this kind of evolves from a path that I think many business owners potentially take, where I had a good career for 20 years, and then basically decided at the age of 40 that I wanted to go and do something for myself, set up my first business, which was in telecoms, which is where I had my career. And we'll talk more about that because it links in nice. A lot of the topics we're going to talk about today are my experiences in that transition and what I've also witnessed a lot of other business owners feel challenged by when they make that transition. And that business was around for 6 years. And then when I finished it, I ended with an absolute passion to go and help other business owners set up businesses because of some of the struggles that I faced in that journey, which again, we'll touch on later. But and it's been fab since then. I've thoroughly enjoyed helping people start businesses, helping people grow businesses and scale them, and also helping people who kind of feel like they've got a business going, but they're a bit stuck and they don't know how to take it to maybe the level that they were hoping it would reach. Because we get all these nuts and bolts that come along as a business owner that you have to juggle as well as what you love doing. So that's where I am now, and you know we're basically creating programs online that help people look at their business, plan their business in the future, build good strategies, and the main thing we're addressing in the coming or recent weeks and coming weeks is helping people with accountability, because we're tending to see that there's a fabulous resource pool out there for company owners in kind of working out business plans and maybe deciding what they want to achieve longer down the line. But these things are very short and succinct. And as soon as they finish, then it kind of drops off a cliff. And it's really easy for business owners to just revert back to where they were before they invested in that resource. So accountability is big on our radar right now to help people actually create these plans and deliver them, so we're with them for the long run rather than the short run.
Cool.
I I tuned into one of your webinar events there. Was it last week or during the week? And I could really understand. It resonated really well that in most business owners' journeys, they're going to have either the stuck journey or the success journey. You know. And like we go back and we say this time and time again, you do not get taught how to run, manage, or grow a business from day one. You are that person who's really good at what you do, you're passionate about it, you start a business and you get that initial growth, and then things seem to get stuck. And some people have the ability to get themselves unstuck, or they engage in coaching or mentoring or support. And then there's the guys who don't want to go to that stage because they're afraid. So yeah, your webinar, your event was really good, and it really clearly outlined that there is two ways to do this, and it's becoming self-aware that you need to get onto the success journey from the stuck journey. So yeah, it's super important to help business owners, and so we don't have that high failure rate within that first 5 years.
Yeah, I thanks, Clive, and that's awesome feedback. And I think that's the bit that scared me when I started researching this. So after my first business, where I really struggled personally to find what I perceived as credible resources to help me, a lot of I mean, this is just an opinion, so I'll say it, and I appreciate people may have varied opinions, but when I was looking for a resource, a lot of what I could find was either government or bank backed. And for me, they were trying to be incredibly helpful, and they were giving me some really useful basic tools. But most of the people that were helping me hadn't actually even owned a business themselves. So it challenged, you know, when I woke up at 3 a.m. and my head filled with all these challenges or excitement, you know, when I spoke to them about it, you could see there wasn't that relationship with them in terms of they totally got where I was.
I think we could go down a rabbit hole of the influx of coaches that are proliferating social media that propose to be this and that, and I think it's an industry that unless you've walked the walk, the context of being able to help is a lot different. And I think the first time I met Ryan was just over 4 years ago, so a month before COVID, probably a month after I started the business, and he did a talk at a networking meeting, and I don't know, I think the messages kind of instantly clicked. And having got to know Ryan over the last 4 years or so, I don't think I've met somebody quite so selfless. They're an absolute giver, and he was always going to be one of the first people that I was going to ask to come onto this, because he's just an insane amount of value and knowledge that this guy can give. So I think with that being said, make sure the check's in the post, Ryan. Okay, is that right? Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. With that being said, we're going to structure this in terms of sort of 3 key areas. And then the 4th key area is a little challenge. So if you've been watching our podcast, you know that we do something a little bit humorous, a little bit personable, interesting at the end. This is no different, Ryan. There's no escape. We have some interesting things for you at the end of this. So
I look forward to it.
So in terms of kind of the 3 constituent parts, and Ryan's put together some really interesting content here for us to speak about that we fleshed out a bit. But we're going to be talking about knowing your outcome, about knowing your numbers, which is probably makes sense considering we're both accountants, Clive and I, and also attracting great clients, the right clients, which is massively important, especially if you're kind of going from that startup to kind of more advanced phase. Getting the right clients on board is imperative. So I guess in terms of the first topic then, knowing your outcome, what can you tell us about what we should be doing, I guess, right at the beginning of a business journey? Like, should we have almost like the exit in mind, like before you start a business? And I guess if that's the case, then how do we plan the exit? Like, what's the dream kind of scenario? Would that be what you would say? Like, how would you kind of attack that?
Yeah, 100%, Neil. So something I've done, and I'm sure you guys have done as well, is lots and lots of small business networking. And when I used to go around and speak to, I reckon I've literally met hundreds, maybe thousands of small business owners. And I've asked them kind of, why are you in business? What is it you're looking to achieve? And you can often tell by the immediate pause that they don't know. And then they'll make something up on the spot. Now, I'm not criticizing that in essence, but it's one of those things, I can't remember where I heard it, but someone said to me, if you don't know where you're going, how do you ever expect to get there? And it's just a really nice, simple phrase that's just stuck in my head ever since I heard it. These 3 topics that we're talking about today, one of the real relevances to them is they're exactly the challenges I had in my very first business. So I had 15 years in telecoms. Thought I knew everything. I'd worked my way right through all the ranks. I was on board level. I understood all the right supply chains. And then I decided to set my first business up, and I just kind of jumped and did it. And I didn't set myself any goals, any plans. I just thought, it's great. I know what I'm doing here. I know all the supply chain. I know where to go get customers, and I'm just going to jump into that pool and go do it. And I didn't put together any kind of strategy or outcome that I was looking for. So guess what? That didn't happen. And then, what I've learned since with other businesses and, some of the coaching and the learning that I've gone on and then I've developed and I now do with other people is understanding your 5-year outcome is really, really important. And a lot of people kind of say, yeah, but 5 years is so far away. I can't even contemplate what I want in 5 years. But they often don't take the time out to actually sit down and think about it, because they are caught in what I kind of refer to as a daily whirlwind of running a business, where you often get up, you instantly take a look at your emails or take a phone call. That kind of sidetracks you for a couple of hours, because there's something you've got to do as a byproduct of that. then you get back to what you originally wanted to do in the day, and then you get distracted by other things, and then at the end of the day, you just survived the day basically. And that is a world I remember so much from my first business, and I put down to not having an actual plan about what my outcome must be 5 years from now. So I think the kind of vision, Neil, you made a really good point there, because the outcome can be so different for everybody. There's lots of things that we can hope for from a business, right from it just fuels something in life for us that we want to be able to achieve. Maybe that's a hobby, maybe that's some traveling, maybe that's a lifestyle, right through to some individuals who do want to create a reasonable sized business to sell. And often there's a reason behind why they want to create a business to sell, because the funds that they're going to sell it from will fuel X as a next step in their life. And if you have no idea what funds you need for that step or what it is you're doing, again, how can you aim and milestone your business to achieve those 5-year goals? So I think it's incredibly important that we understand why we're in business and what we're aiming for, and that inspires us every day. So you put it up on the wall once you've decided what it is. It's somewhere you can see it visibly every day to keep in your head why it is you're doing what you're doing.
But if I can challenge you, so for example, when I lost my job, I've always wanted to have my business, but I kind of fell into it almost by accident. And I think with a bit more planning, it would have taken a bit longer. But my plan wasn't to exit the business at the beginning, and it wasn't to have a 5-year plan. It wasn't really even to have a 5-month plan. It was about, we're going to default on our mortgage in 2 months. Like, how can I generate business? How can I market myself? How can I do the stuff in the now, as opposed to looking too far in the future? So what would you say to someone that's got that approach? Because I guess that approach would then just potentially reciprocate month on month. And, they could, like you say, be stuck in that hamster wheel of constantly, working, in the business and doing the doing, but not having that kind of strategic look for fear of, things not working out or, not being able to afford to pay the bills.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I think that's quite a lot of people who start businesses, if I'm honest. And it was me, definitely, in 2010. So I would definitely advise that you engage with a coach in terms of understanding how to build a strategy and a plan, because it's something that a lot of people don't know where to start. And it doesn't. One of the objections I often hear to this is that when people talk about business plans, for instance, a lot of people envisage like 20, 25 page documents that are really complex and full of stats and data and loads of writing. And it doesn't need to be that way. One of the programs that we run, one of the modules on it is literally about you just helping you break down the things that you'd like in life, and then how your business fuels your life, not rules your life, which is another saying that we really enjoy kind of sharing. And that exercise takes no more than an hour. So you can start to drip feed this kind of structure into your world, which then starts helping you set these milestones and set these goals without massive effort. And it's not a 25-page business plan that you've got to prep with all the details. And then things start falling into place. So I think it's about having the discipline to set time aside to agree to start this journey. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And I think, kind of the things that I was alluding to, and I know Chris is watching this in the Facebook group, and he's just said that this is a huge worry for him. And, he's an avid photographer. I expect he would probably want to be a full-time photographer doing something that he's passionate about, and it being able to pay the bills. So I guess we're talking about this from a financial point of view, but what about from a non-financial point of view? Like, what are kind of, I guess, the desired outcomes, and I guess in theory then maybe the most challenging in terms of, would it be something that's like non-financial? Because most things you could probably tie back to money, but like time is obviously like a big thing, right? Being able to control your time is something that I absolutely adore being able to do now as a result of having the business. So would you say that's like the common one? Is there anything else from a non-financial point of view you normally see?
As in what people are looking to get from starting a business?
Yeah. I mean, like, the financial freedom. Yeah, okay, it's tied to money, but being able to do the school run, or being able to wake up in the morning and go, you know what, my diary's clear, so I'm just gonna have a lie in, or I'm just gonna play PlayStation or whatever. Like that,
Yeah.
kind of control aspect of time is kind of what I personally really, really am blessed to have now. But are there any other kind of non-financial kind of considerations that you would normally see?
I think a lot of it is lifestyle, especially now. I think there's a lot of people that enter business because they would like that control. So when we did a survey way back in 2018, the three things that people wanted, you've mentioned already, are control, freedom, and financial security. So, and a lot of that was based around choosing the hours they work, being able to, especially if they were bringing up families, being able to have a good work-life balance. And I think people were potentially tired of being in the employed world, being restricted on being able to have any of that enjoyment in their life. And I also think people want to be happy, and that's really, really
Yeah.
important. There's a lot of people out there who are not happy, and don't get me wrong, starting a business is a tough journey, but it absolutely gives you the ability to do something that you love and select that kind of time frame that you want to do it within, and have that work life balance and build that financial security. So you get the groundwork correct, and it can actually at 100% deliver on all of those aspects.
And
I
you mentioned
find
about. Go on, sorry, Clive. Go on.
no, I just a quick one there, just to add to that. I find that when a lot of people start a business, they can become very clear on their whys. So, like for me, it was to create a freedom firm, to have that control. So the three areas that you just highlighted, absolutely. What I find with startups and new business owners is they can get clarity on the why, but get stuck on the how. And I think
Yeah.
that's where it becomes very important, about like how do they prioritize their outcomes, how do they prioritize their milestones, things like that I feel that is lacking there at the minute. So it's easy to understand your whys and your dream board and all the outcomes, but getting to that A to B thing seems to be a real struggle for a lot of businesses.
Yeah, 100%, Clive. It's the journey that you go on. I was talking to someone the other day, and it's a bit like a comparison of they were going on a road trip on America from West Coast to East Coast. It was going to take them 4 or 5 days, and it was kind of right. So how have you planned that? Where are your pit stops? Where are you eating? Where are you sleeping? Where are you refueling? And all of those are little milestones on that journey to have an amazing trip from A to B. And it's exactly the same with businesses. And I think that comes down for me a lot to planning and strategy. So this is something else again that it's really ironic, because in my first business, despite having 15 years of every year having to write a business plan and a sales plan, because that was my kind of remit, I didn't apply it to my business. And because I just went straight into my business and did what I thought I knew. And that business, it didn't end great for me. It ended in burnout. It was a 6-year roller coaster where I really, really struggled, and eventually, sold the business, and I didn't get the price that I wanted or it was worth, because I just wanted out. And that was all down to how I managed that journey. And that kind of then, when I was reflecting on what I wanted to do next and help business owners, I looked back at my career and thought, hey, you've done this for a living for 15 years. You've put together plans and strategies and how to get from A to B. Why don't you then now utilize this to help people in businesses so that they don't go on that same journey that you went on? Because that's happening far too frequently for my liking.
Yeah, yeah.
Why,
And
why, why do you think there's such a struggle with new startups in getting help, or knowing their outcome, getting help around knowing their outcome and how to achieve that? Do you have any ideas or thoughts on why that's such a struggle bus for business owners?
I think there's three things I'll talk about here. So one is mindset. One, some people are a bit nervous about putting their hand up and asking for help, because immediately there is a perception, and this was me in my first business, that you can feel like you're failing already if you have to ask for help, and when actually asking for help is 100% the right thing to do. Two is initial investment in making a plan and getting some coaching and getting some advice. It's interesting. This is just my experience I'm sharing here, so it's not necessarily right or wrong. But I've done some work with people in the UK, and I've done some work with people in the US. And there is a mindset in the US that when they rock up for a business, they've already allocated a budget of cash to invest on coaching and business planning. Whereas my experience in the UK has been more that I won't spend money on that because I need to spend it on other stuff that are, to get going. And my two observations of the two different marketplaces is that the people I've worked with in the US have gone on and very quickly built a snowball effect, a positive snowball effect in their business. And some of the businesses I've witnessed in the UK have really, really struggled. And what that results in is they come back and ask for help, but when they've got no money and they've got no time and they're on a runway path that could only give them 6 months left. So mindsets are definitely a key factor in this. So it's the investment, the mindset, and I did say a third one, didn't I? And I'm trying to remember what that was now.
That's all right. No, actually, you make a very good point. So when you're starting a business, certain resources or help you need is an accountant for your compliance, your tax returns, and knowing your numbers. But then, you need a business partner or a coach or a mentor. Like I know I have one. Neil is one. We have the same one. We have other groups that we reach out to for support and help. We help each other. And it can be a lonely world as a solo business owner. But having that network of people, whether you're paid or unpaid, is really important, especially the paid ones. And you're right, there is a direct correlation between those businesses that seem to accelerate through their growth because they have a business consultant, coach, mentor, whatever the phrase or whatever it is, a business helping hand working side by side with them. You can see that direct correlation.
100%. And I think the other thing, I've just remembered something that is a key part of my experience in my journey as well, was please don't go and ask for advice from people who don't understand the journey you're on, or haven't, exactly as you said, Neil, earlier. I think in your introduction is more about who have been on the journey themselves and can relate to it, because and this can actually be really difficult because who you might turn to talk about your challenges could be your partner, your friend, someone in the family, because you feel it's easier to talk to them. But if they've never owned a business or ever run a business, they're unqualified to advise you. They are going to advise you based on their beliefs. And, that's not, again, a criticism of their beliefs. But if they're on a different journey in life and you're on a journey to create a business for the reasons you want to create a business, then there is no parallel there to be able to get good advice from. So it's critical, in my opinion, that if you go and seek advice, you seek it from someone who's been on the journey themselves.
I think I'm going to be a bit brutal now, but I think, and those of you that know me, like, I say a spade is a spade, right? I think the last few years has not helped us from a kind of a COVID standpoint. I think there's a lot of people that expect something for nothing over the last few years of being able to get grants and the furlough scheme. And I think, a lot of people sadly lost their jobs. I was one of them, albeit slightly before COVID, and have tried to maybe start up their own thing, or they've kind of, the whole working from home flexibility, and they're kind of like, well, we don't need an employed role now, we could do something ourselves. But then as a result of that, they're almost kind of expecting things to happen overnight. And I get a lot of comments from, and certainly not from clients, but kind of locally to me, that there's a lot of comments that say, oh, do you know if there's any like grants available for starting up a new business, or do you know if there's how have you grown so fast? And I think a lot of people just don't really see what's under the hood in terms of the struggles. I mean, like, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it, right? Everybody would be a business owner if this was an easy thing. And what people don't see is the 2 years of working by myself, doing ridiculous hours, trying to feed the family. And then, with consistency breeds momentum. And, the last couple of years have been amazing. We've grown a team, and I've spoken at ZeroCon. Have I mentioned that? I spoke at ZeroCon this week. And stuff like that. It doesn't just happen overnight. You've got to put in the effort. You've got to put in the hard yards. And yes, some of that takes money, but then to kind of invest that money, you've got to make it. And to make it, you've got to... I probably say on every single episode, but there's three core things that I always talk about. Number one, you've got to be insanely passionate about what you do. Number two, you've got to be bloody good at what you do. And number three, you've got to tell people about what you do, and you've got to tell people about how you do what you do. And I think specifically us as an industry, just taking accountancy into play, like the third one always falls down. Like as an industry, we are so dry, so corporate, so suited, so kind of stiff upper lip, specifically in the UK, but like hardly anybody does really solid stuff online, personal branding, social media content, like you name it. Like and going to something like ZeroCon actually heightens what people like Clive and I do, and how we try and make ourselves stand out. But then that's the effort that's required to make the money to then invest to then to grow, right? So there's kind of like a sequence of events, and you've both talked about milestones over the last few minutes. So kind of drilling into that, milestones could be financial or non-financial, but everyone should be different, right? Ryan, like everyone's milestone should be different based on their own kind of circumstance. So I guess what would be your kind of core sort of things to look for from a milestone perspective? And are we talking about weeks, months, years? Like what would you say?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And the way we work this when we teach to our programs is we set the 5-year ambition, and then we draw it back to what would be an amazing outcome 12 months from now. So the outcome must be something that makes you feel really energized and fantastic about the 5-year goal being on track. When we talk about that 12 months, we then do what we call a drill down plan, which is we take the 12-month outcome that we agree would be amazing, break it down into quarterly outcomes, and then break those down into projects and tasks that are needed to be done across the year. So there's a very methodical way of doing it, which then, for me, the amazing outcome that I've seen when I've worked with people on this is going from that daily whirlwind that we talked about to waking up every single morning knowing what the top 3 things are that's on their mind this week that they must get done. And I think having that kind of process and methodology to work to helps you get results. And we've seen it through the programs. I think going back to my first business, I remember sitting, I rented an office in Bristol to be in amongst the city. And it was on the first floor of, ironically, it was an accountant's office, and the middle floor they were renting out for a bit of space. And I was the only person in there. There were 6 offices, but I was the only one renting in there. And I just felt lonely in there, not knowing what to do next, just burning my days away, getting caught up in the whirlwind, nobody to talk to. And I allowed myself to be quite isolated. And the funny thing is, when I started kind of opening up and going out and networking and seeing people, I was discovering that how I felt was how over 80% of business owners were feeling when they were talking at networking. So that's why when I realized, and I came out the back end of that business, that lack of structure had really been the byproduct of why my first business ended the way it did. We brought this structure back in, worked it all out. And Clive, you made an excellent point earlier, how people struggle to understand what their priorities are. Things that we bring into the training, like scorecarding, and often people can do to-do lists, and to-do lists can be amazing, but they can also be incredibly dangerous because you just add and add and add and add to a to-do list. And what we tend to do with human nature is we go to the tasks that we can do fastest and easiest because they're in our comfort zone. What we tend to avoid is the tasks that are the more challenging and actually move us and our business forward in a really positive way. So I always encourage people when they have to-do lists that they scorecard what are the things that are going to make the major difference to achieve the objective that they've got for this month, this quarter, this year. That's the priority objective. So just little things like that. We create a mechanism which I can't have. We don't have time to go into today, but we call it the Get Shit Done board. And this is basically every month, week, and quarter how you work through the priority tasks and you shift them from where they are. It's a bit like a Trello board, basically. But you can put it on your wall and you can do it with Post-its, because something I found I got great feedback on when we started teaching this is all the electronic software is amazing for automation, but sometimes if you don't switch the computer on, you never see it, or you try and avoid it. Whereas if it's on your office wall and you have your Get Shit Done board and you can move the Post-its around, or you go to it first thing in the day and that's where you drum into your head what the key priorities are, then that helps you focus straight away and keep your mind on them.
No, that's amazing. I think that, yeah, that whole kind of point about knowing your outcome is so important, but it's so easy to get lost in the weeds. So to kind of take a step back and get that clarity is just, yeah, super important, and something that I wish I had a lot sooner in my journey, for sure.
Me too.
Amazing, awesome. So moving on to kind of the second of the topic, so knowing your numbers. Clive mentioned earlier about knowing your why. And I guess once you understand your why, then it's kind of like, well, how do you build that up? Is it a tangible thing? So I don't know, things like having members of staff, an office, machinery, assets, that kind of thing, or is it, I guess, more intangible in terms of building a network or becoming a key person of influence in your area? Area being industry and or locality. Like, would you consider those things to be like important to understand once you've figured out what your why is?
Yeah, 100%. And again, this is all about thinking. For me, something I learned from a chap called Tony Robbins in the US was all about acting today how you want to be in the future, or where you want to be in the future. And I think that's really important. So when it comes down to strategy and numbers and planning, for instance, when you're looking for your 12-month, this is where I must be 12 months from now to have an amazing outcome. It's like, so what does the business look like there? What are you spending your time doing? What other resources do you have in the business? Whether that's someone who's employed or actually whether it's someone outsourced that's an expert doing something for you. Clive, going back to a point I think you and I have discussed in the past about, what are we good at and what should we be spending our time doing, and what are we not good at? Therefore, we should be using someone who's awesome at that for us, And I think it can feel quite scary if you turn around and say that all of a sudden there's 3 or 4 resources there that you'd like to bring into the business, and then there's obviously a cost associated to that, and you think, wow, you look at today and think I could never afford that. But that's not the attitude I would encourage. It's more like 12 months from now, I'd love those 4 resources. They're going to cost me X a month. And now my sales budget needs to incorporate that. So often the really interesting thing when I talk to people about sales forecasts, and of course I have a massive background in this, so I find this fascinating, is they'll say, oh, well, we did, I'm making the figures up, 200K last year. I'd just like to increase that by 10%. That'd be good. And it's like, well, great. Why? What does 10% do for you? Where does 10% take you? How does that build your dream? And there's never a positive kind of response to that, because it's not something that's been thought through. It's just I'd like to see a gain. I'd like to see a gain. I'd like to see a gain. And they set a percentage rather than a vision for their business and their life. So for me, incorporating, let's say, Clive, your opportunity for Florida, let's say that you would love the opportunity, and most business owners would say, well, how do I pay for a flight for that? How do I have the funding to do things like this? Well, this time next year, you want to make sure that there's money in the pot, that if you get that opportunity, it's not can I do this? It's I'm off. It's because there is accrued money in the bank to cover aspects like that to promote your business. Brand building. Sorry, guys, I'm going to go into one here because I just love this stuff so much.
Go for it.
Brand building is massive. Neil, you made an excellent point at the beginning again about getting yourself out there and being in front of people. When you have a brand, it's really important to go talk, get involved in network, and that is time, and money. And a lot of people will look at events and networking as, if I'm there, I can't be writing a sales proposal, or I can't be doing a specific piece of business that I can bill for. But that's you getting trapped in the everyday survival mode instead of thinking about the bigger picture, which might mean you need more resources to do the everyday work in your business, which means you need to recruit people or outsource that. Bam, there's a cost to go in your budget. And don't worry if you can't do that right this second. It's about when would you like that to happen by, to free you up to do X, Y, and Z. And that then goes into the financial plan.
And would you say... Go on.
No, just a quick one, just to throw it in there. I think you're 100% right. I think as a business owner, putting on your entrepreneurial hat, you need to be living in that future. When it comes to preparing or knowing your numbers, walking backwards is really important. But what I find when you have these budget conversations is there's a lot of fear behind it because it's unknown, and it's because they don't know what it will take to build a business that gives you another 500,000 in revenue. Okay, because I know when I worked in industry, when we did these projections, it started with the sales. And then you would sit down with the operations manager and go, well, the capacity through is going to double. And then the manufacturing guy goes, well, I need double the amount of people. Okay, how much is that going to cost? So what I'm trying to say to you is budgeting equals conversations. And it's very important to have those conversations and work it out. It's very important to understand with the budget or knowing your numbers, it's not about getting it perfect. It's about just providing that roadmap, right?
Yeah.
But making sure that you're working with the right people to help you build that roadmap, both from a business point of view, but also from a numbers point of view. Those are really important conversations to help you know your numbers and understand those outcomes.
Hugely. I mean, that's something you can correlate no matter the size of your business, really. Because I think even if you're a one-person business, you need a team around you to help you deliver stuff, whether it's a bit of marketing, whether it's your accountant, that's your team. And you should be running your business, in my opinion, as that team. And then that goes right up to, if I go back to my kind of sales day, I was running like 140 million pound divisions of telecoms. Then you have stakeholders from all over the business that have to be involved in that planning process. And so whatever scale your business is, there's a team that's involved in A, defining the numbers, and B, delivering them. And something I'd love to quickly throw in, because it's really important while I think of it, is when you're forecasting, a lot of people, in my experience, have made the challenge or the mistake of targeting revenue growth to fund growth. And unless you're making any money from that revenue, it means nothing. I've seen lots of people go out and sell low margin products to increase the revenue, but that doesn't bring the profit back into the business to then fuel the rising cost base in line with your plan. So it's incredibly important that when you make your business plan and you put it together, there's actually a bigger focus on profit generation than revenue generation.
I think that's really important from guys like us who are service-based businesses, because typically speaking, the more you generate in revenue means the more time that you're going to spend doing stuff, right? Like typically your commodity is your time, the effort that you're putting in as a service business. So if you're not making much margin, you're kind of almost being a busy fool. And it's a very common sort of adage to say, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity. And then following on from that, cash is king. So, it's all very well having profit, but then, underline your finances, make sure that you've got money squirreled away for tax, rainy day funds, buffers, whatever that looks like, 3 months, 6 months, all the rest of it, to ensure that you've got money to prepare yourself for the unexpected. Normally things that are unexpected are typically negative, but also there are some things that are unexpected that are positive. So if an opportunity comes into your lap and it requires, let's say, a small amount of capital to make the most of that opportunity, if you haven't got a buffer, if you haven't got spare money sat in the bank, that opportunity could be missed, and then that's a lever for your business not to grow. So I think it's really important from what I've learned over the last few years to make sure your taxes are sorted, make sure you're being compliant, but also make sure you've got a bit of spare moolah in the bank to make most of the opportunities that will come. And hopefully they will come if you're marketing in the right way. But I mean, how far would you look out? I mean, every Christmas I do a budget for the business. I look 12 months ahead. The first one I did, I looked 2 years ahead. But the landscape had changed so much in that first 12 months that the second 12 months was just completely complete nonsense. So now I always do 12 months, and Clive alluded to it earlier, like no budget or forecast is ever going to be 100% correct. Like I've never worked on a budget either for myself or for clients that's been 100% correct. I guess as long as it's kind of 70 to 80% correct, then that's kind of the first part. But then also having that kind of not quite long-term, not quite short-term view of having maybe 12 months, make sure you're tracking back against your actual. So when you get a quarter way through the year, half the way through the year, say, what have I done today, both in terms of revenue, profit, whatever metrics you're looking at, and what did my budget say at the beginning of the year? And are we ahead of it? And if we are ahead of it, that's great. Keep doing what we're doing, because that's obviously working. But if we're behind, why are we behind? What things do we need to cut out? What things do we need to stop doing? What things do we need to pivot or change doing in order to bring us closer to what our plan was at the start of the year? But would you say 12 months is optimum? Like, would you look shorter term or longer term than that?
So I think with annual planning, 100%. So when we do the model that we encourage people to adopt, there's the 5-year, then we break it down into 3-year and 2-year milestones that would encourage you that the 5 years is going to happen, and that creates the 1 year. And then from the 1 year, I think planning out past 1 year, also there's a lot of people that start to get, that's where the doubt starts creeping in because of all the variables that can happen that you mentioned, Neil. And so I think you hit the nail on the head there as well. With you'll have a 12-month plan, you'll have quarterly objectives. So I tend to have a big review at the end of every quarter, but at the end of every month, naturally, are we on track, and asking exactly the questions you highlighted. Yes, brilliant. What could we do more of to even accelerate that? Or no, we're not. Don't panic, because that's something that can happen quite quickly. It's just look at, so what's not worked the way that we were hoping it to, and what can we do to try and improve that and bring it back on track. And I think that's the key thing, is having the open mind, because again, this is one, going back to the scenario I mentioned earlier about people thinking about business plans as a 25 heavy page document with loads of information. They can look at numbers, and the minute something isn't right in the numbers, they haven't achieved it. It's like, oh well, that's not going to work now, then, is it? And they kind of give up on it, and it goes back to that daily whirlwind of survival. Whereas for me, the people I see who are creating very successful businesses and lifestyles from it are going, right, okay, so that's a challenge. It didn't work for us. Let's revisit it. Let's pivot. Let's go again. Is it the audience? Is it the product? Is it the profit? Is it the volume of sales? And even to the extent that you might say we need to tweak our product, which tweaks the commercials we sell at, which tweaks the volume of sales that we have to make. That's all cool, because that's you realizing where you are and taking action to do something about it and setting yourself new measurables.
So what I hear there, Ryan, is it's really important to have somebody to have that conversation with, to bounce those against, to get the feedback, to get the ideas, because you're not going to be able to do that by talking to yourself in the mirror. It's just not going to happen, right? So, like, I remember when I was working in industry, to that point, I worked for a really good operations director, and I would give him loads of numbers and loads of graphs and things like that. And he said, Clive, one day, he just said, stop. He said, just stop. There's an overload of information here. He goes, we have a plan. That plan is an operational plan. That has been costed. That's our budget or our forecast, he goes, right? I want you to monitor to make sure we're on plan. Anything that's on plan is okay. I need you to tell me what's not okay, what's off plan. Bring them to my attention, because that's what we got to manage. If the plan is the plan, it works, brilliant. Anything off plan needs to be managed. So tell me what it is, tell me the numerical, the number, the monetary effect of that, and then some ideas around how we pull that back on plan. It's not hard, but we need to have the right conversations with the right people, like what you do with your clients in your business.
100%. Yeah, that's that accountability factor we were talking about at the beginning, or touching on at the beginning. And I've done this myself. I've invested in, especially again in the first business, I invested in some programs and courses that were anything from a week to 3 months. Kind of got mega excited while I was going through them, because it was all this amazing idea building and number building and wow, this is what we're going to do and it's fantastic. And then, whoa, it just all stopped. So whether you have a team of individuals that you can have within the business that hold accountability for the productivity of the business and where you are on target, or if you're a smaller business, whether it's an external resource like we provide to businesses and you guys provide to businesses, to actually say, great, let's catch up every month, let's catch up every quarter, let's work those numbers, look at them, see what's worked well, what's on your mind, what the challenges are. And the point I'd like to re-emphasize that I touched on very briefly earlier, and you've just reminded me of, Clive, thank you, is also if we're doing okay in our plan and we're hitting our numbers or we're exceeding them, we've done something really, really well. So how can we accelerate doing more of that, which drives the positive outcome? Because we could have a multitude of products and one's hyper performing and one's not performing. And what we tend to do is look at the one that's not performing and think, oh my God, I need to bring that up. When actually it might be that there's not really a market for that product and there's an amazing market for the one that you're doing really well at. And you can smash your numbers by putting more effort into that other product. There's all these kind of variables, as you both kind of referred to in our conversation. And it's having that sounding board to be able to say, this is what's going through my head right now. What are your thoughts?
Very, very quick case study before we move on to the third topic. I have been working with a beauty therapist, not for myself, clearly. I've been working with a beauty therapist. She is one of my longest standing clients since I started the business. And she did a whole range of different treatments, okay? And she priced them in some form of kind of logistical way in her mind. And what we did was we broke down initially she was recognizing all of her income as sales. Okay, so on her profit and loss statement, all the income went into sales. So we broke that down. We broke it down by each of the treatments that she was giving. So all of a sudden, she now knew how much income each treatment was bringing into the business on a monthly basis in terms of a trend. So she knew whether there was seasonality, things potentially, so, maybe at Christmas, people want to have their nails done or whatever. In the summer or in the winter, maybe massages were more popular because of aches and joints in the cold weather, whatever. So we kind of got that first layer of information sorted. And the second bit added onto that was the non-financial element. So it was, how much time does each treatment take you to do? And it could be half an hour for a massage. It could be, 60 minutes for nails, like whatever. I'm no expert, but we got the kind of the constituent parts to say, how long does each treatment take? And then we devised a ratio that says kind of like almost pound per minute or pound per hour or however we did it. I can't remember exactly at the time. That then underpinned the fact that actually some of the stuff that was perceived to be decent because it was bringing in a fair bit of money was taking her the longest amount of time. So she was only doing a few of these treatments a month, whereas some of the less kind of revenue generating kind of treatments she was doing more of because it was less amount of time. So actually what we ended up doing, or what she ended up doing, is she kiboshed one or two of her most expensive treatments because they were taking the longest amount of time, and she really doubled down on the stuff that was a little bit quicker or a little bit less time intensive to kind of get through it. And actually she, as a result of that, she managed to increase her volumes because she was really good at what she did, and she had a big kind of brand and big following as well. And she ended up making more money by taking out the treatments that were making her the most money. Does that make sense? And I think that's kind of like the concept of knowing your numbers, but also manipulating your numbers, looking at revenue and cost, linking them together and thinking, well, if we tweak something over here, what does that do to the top line? What does that do to our profit? What does that do to our time, right? The intangible aspect of what we do. And actually, if we have more time, does that mean we can make more money by doing something else and pivoting? So I thought I'd share that. It's something that I've kind of championed a few times in different industries. And it's something that I looked at in industry as well, looking at different KPIs, key performance indicators, and figuring out ratios, figuring out combination of numbers that give a benchmark in to say, well, okay, well, this is what's happening over here. But if we do this scenario, what does that do to the KPI? Does that mean that we generate more profit? Does that mean that we generate more time? Or luckily, does that mean that we generate more both, which is the ideal scenario?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I want you guys on my side 100%, because you guys are so good with numbers. I've been doing the business planning, the sales forecasting, and sales is really my thing, and getting out there and discovering the markets. But working closely with your accountant to not only give you some of that strategic guidance, but actually help you work those numbers out. Because I think you guys, you guys know numbers so well, and you work with them every day. I think is really essential investment for any business owner.
And Chris just said in the Making Finance Fun Facebook group that he never really thought about pairing those two things together in terms of time and cost. And he's saying that's super helpful. So yeah, thanks for the feedback, Chris. It's you can apply it to any industry. When I used to work for a recycling company, we used to do the amount of time it used to do around in terms of the number of properties that were serviced, in terms of whether it was recycling or refuse, and then all of these different constituent parts were then, well, how much do people cost to do these rounds? How much revenue do we get for this round from the council? So like when you kind of layer up all those different bits and pieces, no matter what industry you're in, there are always opportunities to create KPIs and to create different ratios and metrics to say this is what good looks like from a performance point of view. And then as we go through each month and as we trade in our business, we can then go back to that benchmark to say, are we doing things better or worse? And if it's worse, then we can fix something in that formula. So whether it's less rounds or less people or whatever, to kind of maximize that, make that better. So yeah.
And I think, Neil, you've just highlighted something that's amazing and essential in today's business world as well, is data. I think something that I've witnessed many business owners kind of dismiss it and just kind of, I know what's going on, I know what I'm doing. But actually, without the insight in the data, it's really hard to come to those conclusions and recognize what is and isn't working in the business. And data is absolutely massive. So anything you can do, and I know again you guys are really good at this, is like if there's any technology you can bring into the business, if there's an app that will help you monitor or automate a process that gives you outstanding output information for you to be able to make those decisions, absolutely do it. And I know subscriptions for software can feel like that's something that's adding up as well. A lot of business owners feel like that, it's £15 a month here, £50 a month there. But if you just most subscriptions don't add up more than £150 a month. And that's, for me, that's like a fraction of a day's work in terms of value. So that's something I think is important to get into the mindset. Investing in all of that software and the data is essential.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can see on our broadcast screen, Ryan, the word data figures in my logo right at the top there, and actually the D stands for data as well in the NDC. So look, I mean, not every accountant can offer those sorts of services. If you go into a Cheap and Cheerful, they'll be able to get your tax return done, keep you compliant, keep you out of jail. But if you wanted that more kind of data-driven, I guess, commercial approach, then that's what Clive and I harp on about. That's what we talked about in the last episode for an hour. Like, we have the tools, we have the tech to enable us to provide these sorts of services. It's just that we appear to be in the minority in our industry. It shouldn't be like that, but there are other people that can deliver these services for sure.
Yeah, and just to back you up on that, Neil, I think you and I have had a coffee at points, and I've said to you, I've not met accountants like you guys in my 30 years of working with accountants. Most of them have very traditional methods and very traditional ways of doing things, and it's refreshing and amazing to see you guys take that fresh approach.
Yeah, that's cool, especially when you've got a Lego Concorde that's like in the background, right? I mean, how many accountants have a Lego Concorde in their office, right? That's just amazing. Anyway, moving swiftly on. In terms of the last topic then, so I said at the beginning, recruiting great clients. Now,
Yeah.
I'm gonna challenge you by saying that when I started in business, I wanted to sign anyone and everyone, like anyone
Yeah.
with a pulse,
Yep.
because I had a family to feed. I needed to get the money in. So how would you, that leads to a path where if you're not careful, you will be a busy fool. You will, your margins will get squeezed. The attrition will be high. Like, how can you stop that from becoming an issue before it's an issue?
I think that's all about the day one business plan, and I think all of us have potentially have different ways that we kick off a business. You can jump straight from your employed world into your business. You can try and mix up having a day job with trying to set your business up. There's lots of different ways that we transition, but it's day one knowing what that amazing client looks like, and I'll give you, I had exactly the same challenge in my first business. So again, it was telecoms. I went out and I got so desperate that I just wanted someone to sign with me. And I signed lots of little customers that were doing things like line rental with me on their telephone. And they just had one line into their business. And that's £15 revenue at the time. And it was about £12 cost to me. So it was £3 for everyone I was signing up. And it was just like I went mad signing all these customers up that were really small. And what I found was, and again, I'm just sharing my experience, is those smaller customers were so dependent on their telecoms, and that any time there was any level of interference with their service, they were all over you and wanting it solved in seconds. And I spent the first 2 years of my business firefighting, trying to please loads and loads of small customers that drove me absolutely nuts, didn't make me enough money, and I struggled to have a life and pay myself on top of paying everything else. And my lesson from that was that the minute I started a business next time round, I knew exactly who I wanted to interact with, exactly who would value what I provided as a product or service, and exactly who would invest in that and why they would invest in it. So often in a sales cycle, you can have, or in a sales forecast or pipeline, you can have people that are kind of, I'd say 75% of the market that you think you can serve are probably not even interested in what you're doing right now. 20% of people have an interest and they note that you're around and they may engage with you at a future stage for your product and service. And 5% are in the need for what you do right now and they're prepared to pay and invest in it. And I call that the 5% club. And that for me is where your focus and honing and marketing is on. And those are the customers that you serve the best and the ones for me that you should focus on. And then that kind of opens up a whole nother conversation, which I'll just stall a second in case there's any questions or feedback we want to discuss further on that point.
Clive?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that because I think when most businesses start off, they all fall into that same trap of taking on anybody who will provide them an income and not focused on what you mentioned earlier on, as in maybe consider your profit before your revenue, right? But I think what a lot of people are taught is that you need to get super clear and have clarity on who your ideal customers are. But also the reverse is true, isn't it? Like, it's very important to be clear on who is not your customers.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that exercise leads to your 5% club, as you mentioned. You build a client avatar. This is what they look like. This is how old that they are, as a male, as a female, where do they live, what do they spend money on, in order to be able to take your limited marketing resources and focus like an arrow straight your sales or your marketing or your value towards them. That's super important. But like when you come to talk about recruiting great clients, like how do you not get reliant or overly reliant on a very few number of clients? What ideas do you have around that?
Yeah, so that's a really good point because there's a lot of businesses, and again, my telecoms one was or became this model where 80% of my revenue came from 20% of my customers, and lots of people will have heard of that that kind of scenario existing. And that for me that's where when you're in that scenario, that is, and respectfully, if you're in it, I know you might not want to hear this, but that is a very weak business, because it only needs one simple event to happen in that scenario, and the majority of your revenue is at risk. And I had this before in other businesses where people changed in the business that were my customer. My customers were bought in M&A activities, and all those things influenced a challenge with me keeping that relationship, and then all of a sudden put me in a world of fear that I was going to be able to sustain the business. So I think, with the 5% club, the key thing is to very quickly work out how many of these customers you need to get you to your first milestone, which might be that I'm now comfortable giving my job up to go into my business, as an example. And for that milestone, I need to close 5 clients at this price point. And then the key activity in the sales world is understanding, once you've identified that amazing client persona, is where do they hang out? Where do you need to get your brand in front of? Where do you need to hang out? Where do you need to go? Where's that audience? Not where is the audience that is just going to give me pain. They might sign up, but they're going to give me pain, and that's going to stop me from achieving my goal. So going back into my first telecoms business, I did a tremendous amount of business networking, but I did it in the wrong place. I did it where everyone wanted favors, cheap, because you were part of a sphere that did favors for each other. And that was the only way that you won business, is they'd give you a referral if you did a deal for them, because, hey, we're all in this group together, yeah? And that's the way they had built the group. And then all of a sudden I was winning all this poor business. And then the minute I decided to stop that, which was 2 years in, and that's crazy, it took me that long because I was just caught in that whirlwind we were talking about. And I decided, right, whoa, stop. No, this is the customer I want to serve now. And, I started working out where the people that were the influencers and decision makers in those clients would hang out. And I started hanging out in there. And it took me about 3 to 6 month transition in terms of building a sales pipeline. And then we landed 2 amazing clients who had multi-sites. They wanted phone systems, they wanted broadband, they wanted digital networks. And these little phone lines I've been selling were not even relevant in the whole portfolio. And they were building their businesses, so there was continual growth and revenue coming from each of those customers. And the minute I signed those 2, I genuinely sat back in my chair and said, why did I not do this at the beginning? I genuinely remember that moment. Why did I not do this in the beginning? Because this is my client. This is fantastic, and I've now managed to start building a model with the right case studies, the right type of business that I really want to do, and serve those type of clients and find more of them.
What do you think? So you said you did 2 years before something triggered to make you change. What was the trigger? What was the feeling?
I think I've just reached a point that can vary for everybody that said enough's enough. I had challenges with social life. I couldn't afford life. I had challenges in my relationship. I have, at the time, my kids were living 130 miles away from me, and I was trying to make sure I had money to go see them and spend time with them. And all those things weren't happening because I had made some poor choices.
And then, like, if we just move it forward a wee bit, then I suppose talk about a little bit about client relationships and growing those relationships. What's your approach today about having great client relationships? What's your approach to that?
So it's, a thing that's been around a long time that I don't see many people doing is quite a traditional method, but it's called account development plans. When you speak to a client and they're in your pipeline and you're looking at how you can help them, it's also about how does that look in the future. If someone's in it for a quick win for a service for a week or 2, and then they're likely just not going to ever interact with you again, why would I spend my time on that versus someone who's really serious about their business, is really excited about the 5-year achievements they can make, and actually wants that partner to help them achieve it and get it over the line. That excites me. The others don't. So I think it's really, really important in terms of that qualification of what exists in an opportunity, both for you and the client. Because I know we want to sell and we want to create businesses, but I want to love what I do. I want to work with people that I get up at every day and say, I'm so looking forward to helping Steve, Jane, Fred today. It's fantastic. Rather than, how many times, I don't know if you guys have experienced this. I used to, in my telecoms business, I'd look at my mobile when the call was coming. I don't even want to answer that. And, I got to a stage when I was doing that for a lot of the day, going back to your point, Clive, and it was just like, this can't go on. I need to do something different.
Yeah, it's funny because it was a couple of weeks ago, a couple of episodes ago, I said, Monday, miserable Monday. And Neil turned around and he goes, I love Mondays. I just can't wait to get stuck in and help. And I think, isn't it true, like building those conversations and connections with people who we work with is super important. And I'm starting to see now, as COVID disappears further and further into history, that these webinars, online events are becoming less and less, and the zero cons and the in-person events, quick picks are becoming more and more again. So that humanized contact is starting to become ever more important. I find that building relationships is helping the growth of the business, and I'm assuming you experienced something similar to that.
Absolutely. Sorry, guys, go on.
No, you just get to work with great people, and that gives you great joy.
Absolutely. And I absolutely want every client I work with to, when they get a challenge, I want them to think, hey, I could ask Ryan that. I could go to Ryan for that. Not like, I don't know if I want to ask anybody this because I feel a bit nervous about it, or I feel a bit, is this something I've done wrong and it's a mistake and I don't want to tell someone? When actually it's just hey, there's something on your mind. Let's address it. Let's move on and make sure it finishes with a positive outcome. And having those relationships and sitting down and I think also refreshing clients' minds that there's a bigger goal, there's a goal in a quarter, a goal in a year's time, and just to keep your focus on that outcome rather than something which comes up on the day that can completely distract us and throw us, which happens to us all.
Got a couple of questions. I was just going to say, got a couple of questions in the group. James is saying, I'm thinking of 3 specific letters for that networking experience. It may begin with B and end in I, but I won't say anything more about that because I may be wrong. Chris says, going back to kind of like understanding what an amazing client looks like, or the right client looks like. Chris says, how do you know what that client looks like if this is entirely new for you? In my opinion, you've got to kiss a few frogs. That's just inevitable when you start out. I don't know, Ryan, do you have any other kind of insight into that?
I think you're partially right, Neil, 100%. But also, let's define some real basics here around, is there a long-term opportunity with the client? Is there repeat business opportunity with the client when you talk to them? Are they going to pay you on time? Are they, you might go down the road of looking at kind of resourcing, credit searching. Are they an established business? Does that give you all the positive signals? And how open they'll be with you. And again, this can be really dependent on your product. If we go back to your kind of, I don't know how easy that is in the beauty industry, for example, Neil, for your situation, for how well they can get to know the client. But from my experience selling kind of solution selling is, you really get to build what that avatar looks like. And then when you have the first conversation with that opportunity, you can start either ticking or crossing the boxes, and that tells you whether to waste time on it or move on to the next one.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's like I've written down in my notes niching, and I think I still really haven't niched. I certainly haven't niched from an industry. I kind of niche by business owner, but I guess when you're starting out, niching is probably like the worst thing that you can do if you need to get clients through the door quickly. But I think there is an aspect of niching that will help you try and get to that amazing client quicker. So, in Chris's case, if we're talking about photography, for example, it could be I know that Chris likes sports photography. So like all the different industries like weddings or like headshots or corporate, like sports might be the thing that he wants to focus on. And then we talk about, well, could it be football or cricket or tennis or swimming or like, don't go too far down that rabbit hole of niching before you're in a position where you can afford to niche. But actually that will help you define your amazing client quicker than if you were to say, I just want to do photography, and then trying to figure out at that point, oh well, I'll do a wedding over here, I'll do some sports stuff over there, I'll do some headshot stuff over here, because that scattergun approach, in my opinion, I don't think that's going to help.
Yeah, I agree. And it's like that old rule, isn't it? When you scattergun, you can only apply 10% of effort to
100%.
Each area you're looking for. So whereas if you pick two of those, let's say you went down the sporting route and you pick football and swimming, then there's two to focus on here. And I have to, as someone, when I acquire a service off somebody and I invest in them, I do like to look if they've got something specific to what I'm looking for. And therefore, again, it stops you going down the rabbit hole of just, I can do everything for anyone. And actually focusing on, hey, if you need photography on football, I am your expert, and I am going to produce the very best results for you. And here's my evidence to show why. And bam, you've really got their attention. And that all plays nicely into the 5% clients and marketing to those 5% clients as well, in terms of messaging, which I think is really important.
Yeah, and just on a final point, and I think Clive mentioned it a little while ago around kind of using those clients, those amazing clients, and leveraging them to your benefit. So like for me, that will be hopefully things like shout outs on social media, or it could be inviting them onto podcasts, or it could be them doing a video testimonial for me, which we've done quite a few recently, and they have been explosive in terms of engagement and also cynically new business as well. And I think like for me, most clients are always happy to do a testimonial, whether it's maybe not all video, but certainly kind of written and online. I think all you've got to do is ask. I think that's the bit that a lot of people are maybe too humble or too proud to do, to ask. But it, in my opinion, like whenever we've asked for someone to do one, sometimes we have to ask somebody 2 or 3 times if they're busy. But they're more often than not happy if they are that top sort of A kind of client in terms of our standards.
Yeah, 100%. Totally agree with that. And that in today's digital world, that's essential. I think to be able to get out there and show evidence of people you've worked with and what you've done and how they've enjoyed working for you. And, again, like when you work with a coach, there can be bits that you don't like about the coach, or the coach pushes you down, challenging paths that you're not so comfortable with. And it's good to hear about those moments as well. And so it's great for your client when they're giving this information to be as authentic as they can. And if they love working with you, they will be. The other age-old question that a lot of people are afraid to ask that helps when you have amazing clients is, if you love what we do with you, can you think of anyone else that would benefit from that as well? Because generally, as we know as business owners, the business network is pretty big and pretty expansive, and we've all got our own sphere of contacts. So that's one of the easiest ways to win your next piece of business, is to actually not be afraid to say, I'm so glad you're loving this. I'd love to help other people with this. Do you know anyone who might benefit from it? And that nice introduction there from someone who already loves you, will speak positively about you. Going back to my experience of the real pain in the butt customers, if I'd have asked them to be a reference point, all they're going to say is, oh yeah, I had 1 hour of downtime in the last year and it was a nightmare, and that's your reference, and how is that going to help you? You're not going to win business through that. So it's really, really key not to be afraid to ask those questions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What an insane amount of value the last hour or so has been. Ryan, thank you so much for coming on board. We got the crowd in. They were very appreciative of everything that you said today. Like, thank you so much. But we are not done with you just yet, my friend. We have got our little segment at the end where we are going to tease and torment you, my friend. We are going to do something a little bit different. These things here if you can see that on my camera. For those of you not watching the video, these are Diary of a CEO conversation cards. So most people know that I've got a bit of a love affair with Stephen Bartlett. It's no surprise. And at the end of every one of his episodes, he gets the guest to write a question for the next guest without knowing who that next guest is. I think I've said it like Stephen. It's quite cool. I've got a deck of cards here, again, for the purposes of the video. I'm showing the deck of cards. I've already picked the first one out. So, are you ready, Ryan?
Let's go for it. Yep, go for it.
Okay. So the first question has come from Gary Neville. Gary loves you, Ryan. And he says, tell me something you have never told anyone before.
Wow. Now, being a very talkative, open chap, that actually feels like a big challenge. Let's see. That is. I'm trying to rack my brains now.
Clive said this to me when he interviewed me on, I think it was episode 2, and I really struggled as well. It's a difficult one, isn't it?
You're trying to think of something.
And then Neil told us a story how he nicked like a statue and brought it into his college or university dorms.
It was the one where, and I think I had told it before. It was the one where we walked into town in Weston-super-Mare on a boozy night, and I borrowed a for sale sign from a house and I stuck it on the church forecourt.
Bold boy.
There you go.
Have you any other questions in there?
I'm really struggling with that one. I've got to be honest.
Okay, all right. Let's go on to. I'm just shuffling them. Hang on, 2 seconds. 2 seconds, because I probably won't know all of these celebrity type people. Okay, here we go. Next one. Tony Hawk. Oh, I used to love the Tony Hawk's games as a kid on PlayStation. Tony Hawk, the skateboarder, says, when do you feel the most emotionally connected to yourself?
Oh, wow.
Right now, at this time and age, it's with my son.
Yeah?
Yeah, because he's a massive football fan, and the Euros are coming up, and he lives in Plymouth, which is, for anyone who doesn't know, is he's watching, it's about 120 miles away from here. So we speak every Sunday about football because that's his absolute passion. Now, he's much more of a football fan than I am, but it's just that we have the amazing close relationship. He's in his early 20s. Every Sunday he still wants to have a call and he wants to talk about football. And we go from what normally would be a 20-minute call into something that can be 2 hours because we're just really emotionally engaged in it. And it's just a fantastic experience. And I love it every week. I look forward to it every week.
Brilliant.
That's amazing. And Plymouth have just signed Wayne Rooney as their new manager, haven't they?
And my son is a United fan. So there you go. When I saw that on BBC Sport, and I said to him, you're going to have a United legend living in Plymouth. He was very ecstatic.
Oh, amazing. Cool. Next one. What is your biggest regret? And if you could go back, what would you do differently? And this one's from Christian Horner.
Well, for Red Bull Formula One boss.
Red Bull.
Yes. So I probably would pause going into very specifics on this, but it would be just about going back to my kind of 16 to 20-year-old life and trying to realize that I had many opportunities in front of me instead of just following a carved path that people had set in my mind. So I think this is something that many people can probably, if they're honest, reflect on and just think about how all of us in our upbringing have influences in our head about how things happen and the way life is mapped out for you. And I definitely fell under that influence quite heavily in that period of my life. And I then followed things that really were nothing I enjoyed and not what I wanted to do. And I'd love to have had the forethought that I was so young then that I had many, many, many avenues I could explore and plenty of time to explore them. And that's something I think I would love to revisit if I had the opportunity. And I'm sure I'm not alone.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
cool. That's amazing. We'll do another couple or so. This is an interesting one. This is from Peter Crouch. What makes you
Oh,
most What makes you most angry about society?
closed mindset.
Yeah.
Simple as that. Yeah, but the interesting thing that I'd love to admit is that was me once, and actually, there are still times when I have to recognize myself that I have a closed mindset on things and open it up. But in the last, I'd say, 10 years, I've been on a big journey about opening my mindset, and it makes me sad when you kind of suggest things people can think about, and there's just an instant answer and a dismissal of it.
Yeah, yeah. I get quite frustrated sometimes about people that are really biased. I try and see the best out of everyone in every scenario, and I try and see it from both sides of the point of view. And I think that's where social media can be really, really toxic, because the amount and it's not great that we're in the UK from a business owner perspective. I think if we were in the US, then I think business owners are revered more or better, if that's the correct phrase. And I think there's a lot of jealousy and animosity in the UK around people that have success or people that want to do something. And when you see all those kind of comments and it's quite sort of negative and it's all sort of biased and one-sided, that winds me up as well. So
yeah, no, that's another very good point. Yeah,
Gary Vaynerchuk. A guy that I got a load of admiration for, says, "What scares you the most today?" Gary V. There he is.
Nice one, Gary. So, what scares me the most today is me slipping into a mode where I feel like I'm not alive. And what I mean by that is keeping that positive mindset again. That I'll give an example. So I'm 52 now, and I already have people I know around my age group that are relaxing about life and spending it on the sofa and thinking about retirement. And for me, I actually went through this amazing journey for the last 10 years, and I see the next 50 years as being the best of my life. And that's an attitude I have to thank a lot of people for bringing forward into me. And I love that outlook. I absolutely am scared livid of falling into the other alternative.
Cool. Last one. This one is from Will Ahmed, who coincidentally he's the CEO of Whoop, which is the fitness tracker that I got on my wrist. When was the last time?
Do we have a new sponsor? Is that what you said?
No, sadly not. Although Stephen Bartlett invests in Whoop as well, so there's some correlation there. So Will has asked, when was the last time you cried of happiness? And I'm not counting on this podcast. I know you've enjoyed it.
Wow. Cried of happiness. I think probably it's another story involving my son, because he was a big United fan, living in Plymouth is a long way away, and didn't ever see the opportunity to go up to Old Trafford and actually watch a match there. And a good friend of mine managed to get us hospitality tickets, which I didn't tell Harry about. I just told him that we were going away for a dad and father weekend, and he could bring a mate if he wanted to. And he brought a friend along who happened to be, I knew who he would bring, and they're a United fan. And we went up to Manchester and we stayed the whole weekend, and we had a stadium tour, and we had the VIP tickets and watched a game. And just, I think the emotions for me of giving him that experience was just off the scale. And
That's awesome. That's amazing. When was the last time you cried of happiness, Clive?
Me, every morning I wake up, I cry of happiness because I'm just happy to be on this journey, this adventure, and God knows what's going to be ahead of us for next week. So yeah, very emotional.
That's amazing.
Clive, yeah.
Oh God, that's amazing. Mine was almost after ZeroCon when I realised that was actually quite a cool thing to do. The real answer was probably on Monday or Tuesday, where I sat in front of an episode of Undercover Boss, and I don't know if you've seen that program before, but the CEO goes undercover in the business, and then at the end they reveal who they are, and they give a load of like gifts out to the people that they've interviewed, and every single time they give these gifts out, and then they start crying, and then I go, oh my God, like I'm going to start crying. It's so happy. It's like so emotive. But there you go. Undercover Boss. Yeah, watch it. It's great. That's all, mate. That's all I'm going to do. You did well. Thank you so much.
Just failed on the one question. There you go.
There you go. Thank you again for coming on board. We'll definitely have you back, mate. We're gonna rinse you for all it's worth. I hope you enjoyed it.
Legend.
I loved it, and thank you for the opportunity. I mean, it's great. You know, all three of us are really passionate about business owners and anything we can share and help them with. And obviously, I welcome anyone asking you guys questions direct. And if you want to feed any of them over, feel free. I'd be happy to.
How can people get in contact with you, Ryan? Like socials, website. Like, what's the best way?
Yeah, so the best way is on Facebook, probably. I have my own profile, and I have a profile under Gomentum. The logo's in the top screen there, so you can see the spelling, Gomentum. Or my email is ryan@gomentum.io. And, you know, feel free, reach out. You know, if you're a business owner and any challenges, that's my passion. I love helping people.
Perfect. And
Ryan,
I was going to say, we'll put the contact details in the kind of recordings and everything that we do as well. And we'll make sure that you're tagged in. Yeah.
Thank you. That's very kind.
And Ryan, do you have any events, webinars, or anything that's coming up that people can jump in and have a quick look at what you're about?
Yeah, absolutely. On our website, there is a permanent webinar, which we did as a pre-recorded, so people can watch it in their own time. And that's all called Stuck to Success. So that's all for stuck business owners. And this is helping them address some of the three main challenges that we see out there for stuck business owners. And the webinar is about 45 minutes long. You can watch that, you can get insights, and then there's the potential to look at alternatives to take that on afterwards at the end. So, yeah, thanks, Clive, for mentioning that. That's something that people can do through the website.
Folks, I actually watched that webinar last week, and I got some really good key takeaways. And there's actually a good few light bulb moments in there. Even I could reflect and see it going, this guy's hitting the nail on the head, and he's just speaking it crystal clear.
Thank you.
Amazing.
That's very good. Yeah, thank you.
Amazing. Next episode of the podcast, episode 6, will hopefully be in 2 weeks' time. So Friday the 28th, I think that is. And Clive, you said you wanted to talk about digitization of businesses. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Even Ryan tipped on that earlier on. You've mentioned it with data. And I think all of these really important conversations need to be fueled around having real-time information. And the only way to get that data is by looking at how we can digitalize businesses, both from coaching, mentoring, accounting, whatever it is. But data is key. So, how do we do that? We digitalize, we automate, we streamline. So I think it's important that we have an episode based on that. So we can just give some insights on how you may start that journey to digitalizing your business.
I can't wait to geek out on that one. That's going to be really cool.
That's going to be good. That is going to be really good.
Yeah. Real nerdy topic, but also, like I alluded to before, especially in the accounting industry, there's still lots of accountants, there's lots of people doing shoeboxes of receipts, invoices, paper, non-digital stuff. So I think it'd be really eye-opening for a lot of people. So yeah, I can't wait to do that one. Cool.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. I hope you've had fun. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Everyone listening live, I hope you've enjoyed the last sort of 90 minutes or so. And we will share this on socials. We'll do some shorts and get some really incredible insight from this. But thank you again, Ryan, for coming along.
I've loved it. I've totally enjoyed it, guys. Thank you so much.
All right. Enjoy your weekends, guys. Take care.
All right. Take care. Ta-da.
See you later.
Bye.